One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Charlie Taylor, the new Associate AD for Strategic Communications and Marketing at the University of Iowa. Good morning. How are you, Charlie?
Doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think we have some interesting angles to talk about today. Commonly around the industry, many times when there's a new AD, the media, and I don't necessarily think of myself as traditional media by any stretch, but many times the media wants to talk to that AD and say, why did you make this move? I actually find it really fascinating, and I'm curious to get your feedback, and I hope to have more conversations like this about why folks at the assistant AD level, associate AD level, senior associate AD level, why they make the moves that they do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and obviously you're headed back to your alma mater there in Iowa City, and I'm sure that had a very strong pull for you. But my first question is simply looking back on your 8 years at Oklahoma, and you kind of covered a couple different external functions. I want you to recap that experience in Norman, what you learned and skills you acquired and built during your time. What were the most important facets of the last 8 years?
No, absolutely. And it's been a fantastic 8 years here in Oklahoma, and it really has set up everything for my move to Iowa. And I just want to start out by saying that everything at Oklahoma and everything that we do starts with our leadership. And I can't thank Joe Castiglione, our athletics director, enough for all that he's taught me. The same with Kenny Mossman, our senior associate for external, Luther Lee, who's my direct report right now, our senior associate and CFO, Larry Nathie, our executive associate AD. The leadership team at Oklahoma is just amazing, and it really breeds to the entire staff. Really what we've done, I was director of partnership services handling national sponsorships at the Arena Football League out of Manhattan when the opportunity to come to Oklahoma presented itself to me. And at that time, the leadership team led by Joe was looking to evolve what we were doing. The way Joe said it was, I've just got a gut feeling that things are changing. And I can't put my finger on it, but we've got to start doing things. We've got to evolve. And that's probably the first thing to kind of go to the second one that you learn right away is that it's got to be an evolution and not a revolution. And that's something I'll take to Iowa. I was doing a lot of fantastic things with a great staff. But in any change that we make, you've got to evolve what you're doing. In the last 8 years, that I hesitate to call it a transition because it's not a massive transition, but it's been 8 years of evolving what we do. And really that evolving is how do we get even more focused on sales? I think, Matt, in our industry, we've been very open to just saying, okay, here's the football schedule or here's the men's basketball schedule. We know everybody who's an OU or an Iowa fan wants to come see and watch us, and we're going to open the doors and charge whatever we want. And, that you're going to pay for it. Today, with all the different ways we access content, with all the different ways we access purchasing a ticket, how we experience a game, an event, that's changed, and we definitely see it in the younger generation as well. How often, when I went to Iowa and I graduated, so I'll give you my age a little bit. I graduated Iowa in '96 and then Tennessee at Knoxville in '98. You lived for those Saturday football games. You lived for those men's and women's basketball games. And so much so sometimes, I had to test the next morning. Okay, I'm still going to the basketball game tonight. That's changed with our student body. We can talk students a little bit later, but the evolution really has been how do we become more sales focused? How do we get proactive in our sales? And then how does our marketing, our ticketing operations, really our communications, everything we do on an external side get focused on hitting a number. And under Kenny's leadership and Luther's leadership at Oklahoma, that's really what we've been focusing on. Nowadays at OU, the communications department, the website folks, the Sooner Vision folks, the TV and the broadcast folks, they're all concerned as much as the ticket and the sales folks about have we hit the number, whether that's a sold out number for football and continuing the 104 game sellout streak, whether that's a Saturday, Friday weekend men's and women's basketball game. That's kind of the big evolution that we've taken. How does everybody focus on getting butts in seats, getting the revenue in pockets, and then balancing that great thing we all have the challenge of balancing getting eyeballs on screens while also getting butts in seats. So, and then really a third piece of that is how do you expand that out to all of your Olympic sports? Because that is just as important to any athletics director as anything else. You've got to keep that harmony between all of your programs, all your sports programs, all your different teams, when there is the challenge of what fans want. So, because our mission isn't just to sell football and men's basketball. Our mission is to provide the best possible experience for our student athletes to graduate and win games and win championships. So those are probably the biggest things I'm taking, from OU to Iowa. And again, it's going to be an evolution under Gary Barta's leadership, under Matt Henderson's leadership, to really look at how we do things and what we do things. Again, it's not coming into change immediately, but it's a patient evolution is the best way to put it.
You use this term, everybody's focused on the number. Is the number for different departments a different metric for everybody that attributes to butts in seats and or revenue, or is everybody truly focused on butts in seats and revenue as their one number for the department? How does that work?
I think it's as much the latter, but then your number changes depending on what you do. Obviously, if it's eyeballs on screens, you want to get the highest eyeballs number you can get, or ears listening for the rights holder. But at the same time, are you making sure you integrate into that? Here's the reasons to come to the event. I think the big piece of it for each one of the different departments that we've been evolving to, and by no means do we think we've got it perfect yet, but it's that it's got to be endemic. We went through this with Learfield, with our rights holder. We've done it in a number of different ways. You can't force feed people something they don't want today. So it's got to be tied into everything, whether it's your ticket sales message, whether it's go to the website and do X, Y, and Z, whether it's, go look at the sponsor's website or go to this grocery store or this gas station because the Sooners or the Hawkeyes say so. It's got to be endemic to what you're doing. So we've kind of looked at it as, okay, well, how does engagement go up if we do this versus that? And that's kind of it's not just a buzzword and an overused buzzword in engagement, but how are we making, in the ticket sales side and the operations side, how do we make buying a ticket and experiencing an event the easiest it can be for our fans? We've got to look at our fans getting out of their couch in front of their $2,000 flat screen TV where they've got whatever they want to eat, whatever they want to drink. They're parking very close to where their seat is at home. What's going to motivate them to come out? And we all still feel that coming to an event is still an awesome experience, but how do you make it as easy as possible for them? The numbers are really important, but I'll also say this with the analytics side, which we've really taken to heart, is that numbers can only reinforce a gut decision. They don't replace it by any stretch of the imagination. Your numbers can tell you're going to have a great crowd if you do X, Y, and Z on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. But are the numbers taking into account that Tuesday night at 7 o'clock of a school night, you lost your entire family population? So how are you going to get young alumni or singles to come out? And so the numbers have to reinforce the gut decision. But for every different department, it's a different number leading to that ultimate number of, did we get butts and seats? Did we sell enough tickets? Or if ticket sales wasn't the goal, did we get butts and seats? Then did everybody have fun? Was it easy?
So the simple follow-up here, Charlie, is what are the immediate opportunities at Iowa?
That's a great question. Iowa, to me, first of all, my move to Iowa, I wasn't necessarily looking to go anywhere. We've got a fantastic athletics department doing a lot of fantastic things at OU. All the championships, 3 national championships this year, playing in 2 Final Fours, one being the CFP, one being men's basketball. Women's basketball, always right up there. It's hard to leave Oklahoma is the best thing to say. But the allure for me to go home, my entire family's in Iowa City, grew up in Davenport on the eastern side of the state. But been a Hawkeye my whole life. My father, my grandfather, everybody, my uncle down in Florida. So to be able to go home, that's the biggest draw. The other big draw is moving up to some extent, having all the external departments to be able to lead a great, fantastic group of people there was really the draw. But the opportunity to Iowa, there is a lot of similarities between Iowa and OU. And really the first one, I think, starts with Gary and Matt. Their vision, we're in a mode at Iowa where there's a lot of, we're building a new leadership team and hence building the team around. So there's a great opportunity there. And so much so that everything I just kind of mentioned about looking more holistically at everything we do and how everything we do ties and draws into meeting those goals. You know, Gary's big three are win, graduate, and do it right. And that's what we live and breathe at Iowa. And I think, how can we innovate? Again, not change, but how can we innovate all the great things we're doing to focus in on any one of those big three indicators, which again, on the external side is how are we getting a creative message out? How are we innovating? You know, how do we look at potentially doing things a little differently to be more effective and efficient? And in that evaluation of things, that doesn't mean that what we're doing isn't the most effective and efficient way of doing whatever it is that we need to, whatever the goal is. But conversely, our fan base, I personally feel, and I think we all kind of feel this movement, especially in collegiate athletics in our industry, is that our fan base moves faster than we do. And I mean that by the fact is they go and get what they want, when they want, how they want to get it, at the time they want to get it. And if we're not ready for that, they'll go somewhere else to get it. So, and whether that's tickets, whether that's merchandise, whether that's an experience, whether that's, you know, I mean, if your website isn't what they want, they'll go to somebody else's website to get their information and content. So, it's just the world we all live in, which is a fantastic world to live in, from, you know, the fact that we're those people too. So if you think about your behaviors, are we in the industry looking at those behaviors and how we do our business? And that's kind of the big opportunity I see. And at Iowa, we've got all the resources we need. Facilities are fantastic. The coaches are amazing. The staff that's already there is top notch. And under Gary and Matt's leadership, I could just, you know, that coupled with going home, being able to go fishing with my brothers and my sister, you know, on the weekends when we don't have an event, you know, it's going to be real special for us to move back and you know, have our base there. But everything at Iowa, I mean, Iowa just winning Western Division in football, 3 appearances for men's basketball, consecutive 8 postseason appearances for women's basketball. Then we do this little thing called wrestling pretty well, and can put 45,000 people in the football stadium for a wrestling meet. It's a pretty special place. It always has been. I got engaged there, met my wife there. So it's real special for us. But from a work standpoint, being able to grow is probably the biggest thing for me. Not that I wasn't growing at Oklahoma, but the point is being able to take that step up with the great staff and at home, to me, doesn't get much better, I think, than anywhere else. So we're sad to leave Oklahoma. It's going to be really hard to pull the truck out of here when the time comes. But at the same time, where we're going back to is really the only place I'd ever go back to. So
we're recording this on June the 30th, which means I guess we're more than 2 months until football season, but we're basically 2 months until football season.
Yeah.
So for an individual like you moving into a role that has oversight of, you know, of course, football marketing and game execution and those types of things, is that really your key focus to get up to speed as quickly as possible with how Iowa has done things and how you can contribute to, as you said, innovate and improve? And how are you doing that currently? Because it's such an important piece of the overall picture.
Yeah, the first thing I'm going to do, we've talked about it greatly with everybody back in Iowa, is listen. There's no massive change. There's no massive thing broken. It's listen and evaluate. Now, when I get there, and again, we're really early in the process. If there's a checklist that everybody's on board with, then we start knocking that checklist out. But yeah, we've got a short amount of time till we kick off. And more importantly, a volleyball and a soccer team start about 3 or 4 weeks before football does. So are we ready to go there? And I have full confidence in the staff that we're moving along and going to be ready for all of our sports to give them the best experience possible when they kick off. But yeah, there's not a lot of time, and that's why we're trying to make the right moves as quickly as possible. But you also don't want to just make them to move them quick. We've got to get it right because you don't want to make the mistake of putting a wrong piece in the puzzle and then having to start the puzzle all over. So I think initially it's just go in to listen to see what has already been identified is things that either need to evolve or just candidly at this point, it's what can you get done? What has to get done that's already been planned? That's the top thing on the list. We aren't going to go in and just blow everything up right before football season and then you've got chaos. But I think that the first thing is what's already been planned, what's already been done, are those things being executed? And then honestly, I think it's what if there's anything that needs to quote unquote change, and I really hesitate using the word change because things are already fantastic. It's do you tweak something? Do you dial it up here, dial it up there? And at that point, it might also be as much as what happens, and this is with any sport at any school, what happens with the team? What happens with the play on the field? And probably that's the first couple of things that you start to look at. At this point, football's pretty much, I don't want to say completely done because I haven't been there and haven't seen it yet, but if there's anything you really start evaluating in the next 3 or 4 weeks is men's and women's basketball. You start looking at those winter sports and launching them because from a marketing and communication standpoint, you've got the largest set of ears and eyes that you'll have all year for those football home games. So are we getting the right message out for our winter and spring sports while we've got that biggest audience possible with football? And is that ready to go? Where are we at with that message, that communications plan? So there's a lot to do in a short amount of time while also painting and packing boxes and then painting and unpacking boxes in Iowa City. So, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get started.
In closing, I'm curious of your perspective on spending 8 years at Oklahoma and 8 years in this business. I don't know the metric off the top of my head, but I think it's pretty safe to say 8 years at one school over indexes in terms of the average tenure for basically anybody. But, and I'm sure you came across some, really talented younger folks at Oklahoma and across the industry. But I'm curious of your perspective on how you believe the younger generation, so the 20s crowd, views movement and transition in our industry today, and how those of us who are no longer in our 20s can be sure we're effectively engaging with those types of aspiring administrators.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great question, and I appreciate it. I think from what I've seen, and none of this is bad. I don't want this to come off as a negative because there's really two sides to the coin. There's and I'm 43, so there's folks my age that came up watching the generation before us in the industry. And what I learned is that, you find a great job. Don't worry about your next job. Do your job as best as you can. Learn, soak in as much as possible. And more importantly, build fantastic relationships with everybody you work with. And that's hard. I mean, in our business, there's things you're going to do that may not make people happy. You're going to make mistakes and make them. Jump in 100% and make those mistakes, but learn from them and don't make those mistakes again. And if you get the right fit, and right fit means where you live, folks you're around, your support network, as well as outside of the office, as well as a great fit inside the office, you'll give yourself that opportunity to really grow. But this is an industry, and what happened to me, again, there's some luck, there's all timing involved, but at the same time, the reason it happened for me was really twofold. Everything I've done at Oklahoma, I believe, but then also because I had a great support team and those folks I mentioned at the beginning of the call, and Joe Castiglione and Kenny and Luther and Larry and our leadership team, to where I've been told, quote unquote, I did this right. A lot of people on both sides, the Iowa, the Oklahoma side, said you did this right. I immediately called my leadership team and said, hey, what do you know about Iowa? What do you think? Where are they going? And got great advice. And all of a sudden phone calls on my behalf without me being asked were being made to Iowa because they knew how important Iowa was to my family and I, how important going home would be. And I had research, in a way, being done for me before I think I was ever really a serious candidate. So I say all of that because that's kind of how it works today. Transitioning the second half of your question with the next generation, I think as administrators and or as that generation, patience is a big part of this, developing those relationships, getting those phone calls made for you, whether you've asked for it or not. I mean, when I'm looking to hire for things, I'm calling 3 or 4 or 5 very trusted people in our industry that I trust, people I've grown up with, so to speak, in the industry, and saying, hey, we've got this position open. Who do you know? Who would be a good fit? You know how I work. You used to work with me. We've got to find a fit at Iowa, or we've got to find a fit at Oklahoma. And I start getting names. And then they start calling those people. So it's a networking thing. It's a relationship business. I think one of the challenges, both sides of this, you hear about this quote unquote challenge, whether it be with the younger generation, I'm kind of tired of the word millennials. I think it's overused and it doesn't necessarily label correctly. But the point is that I think there's got to be patience. So if you want to move up fast, my advice is move up fast by building great relationships. Move up fast by showing that you're going to get in and do the work, and you're not constantly thinking about your next position. You're worried as much about doing a great job in this position while you're building great relationships with those you work with. And then nothing happens naturally, but the best way I can describe it is they naturally happen because you've got the trust, not just of your boss, but the trust of 3 or 4 other leaders in the industry that, I've been told about 20 phone calls were made about me before they called me. I only gave them 3 people to call. So if that says anything to anybody else, my hope is that everybody in my network that I know and don't know, positively and negatively, they called. And to their credit, I'm glad they did because they knew as much about me when I actually went in for the sit down as I hope to research and know about them through my contacts. You can only learn so much on the internet until you're face to face with people to find out if you think, because at this level, I really believe you're looking for a fit. You're looking for a personality. When I've hired at Oklahoma, we're looking for great personalities that fit who and what we are, what our leadership already is, where we want to go. All those things go into it. You know what you know, and if you've been in the business long enough, people assume you know how to quote unquote do the job. But now what you're looking for, especially what I learned and going to a senior level position now, is it a great fit? So I really think it's that relationship building. It's doing the job. It's not necessarily worrying about the next job because it'll happen. And then it's asking the advice. What do you think of this position? Would this be a good fit for me? I mean, I told Joe and Kenny and Luther, I don't necessarily want to leave, and that's all I had to say in this case, because it's going home. At the same time, they all looked and said, yeah, you better look at it because a position like this doesn't necessarily open up every day, and let's see what happens. So those are probably the key points that I'd say with the next generation.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.